This is a very good, simplistic presentation of the role of advertising in chiropractic. Remember I talked about the 3 different types of marketing. Basically, there's publicity, there's advertising, and there's educational sales. This explains it pretty well, okay? So publicity, you can see, and we talk about a difference between a campaign and an advertisement. We'll get into that a little different. But this is what I wanted to go is the role of advertising in chiropractic. So I wanted to just share what are the different roles of publicity versus advertising versus educational sales. They are different. They're different on purpose for very specific, targeted, focused reasons. They don't all do the same thing, okay? So here we go to publicity. What's publicity primarily used for? Publicity is used to affect trust. It's used to affect authority, name recognition. That's what publicity is for. Now, where does publicity fit into the S-curve of economics? Typically, there's a sequence of events you do to get a market. It's called a campaign. Typically, you start with publicity over here. You start with publicity. Why? To increase name recognition, authority. Do you really expect to get much business from publicity? No. Publicity is like setting you up. It's setting you up to take you in. That's what it is, okay? So are we going to use publicity when we go into personal injury attorneys? Yeah. That's going to be the first step of the marketing. So publicity, we will use it for authority, name recognition, and awareness. That's why we'll use it. Who are the only consumers that will buy from publicity? Need, a perceived need, or no perceived need? Perceived need. And what category of perceived need? High, low, or middle? High. The only market that publicity will naturally get is a market where there's already a perceived need, and that's typically real small, and there's a real high perceived need, which is a small segment of that market. So it doesn't work very well. But that's not what it's designed for. It's designed to set it up. It's designed to set it up. Okay? Next, advertising. Advertising is used to stimulate interest, desire, and even help remove obstacles. Now remember I said the formula over here? I said the core formula is need relative to the obstacles relative to the trust. That's the core formula to a target market. So we have a target market. We're going to apply a core formula to this target market. The core formula is need relative to obstacles divided by trust. What category fulfills trust? Publicity. What category fulfills obstacles and trust? Advertising. Advertising is used to stimulate awareness, interest, and desire. Awareness, interest, and desire. That's what advertising. And it's used to help eliminate and minimize the obstacles. That's what advertising is used for, primarily. Okay? Now, how does that relate to the S-curve right here? Well, this side has a perceived need. Okay? So can I use advertising over here if there's a perceived need? Yeah. There's a perceived need, so I can use advertising. And then the advertising is used to give the message that affects one of these. One of these 5 factors on why people determine why and where they're going to buy. Trust, price, proximity, quality, or service. That's what the advertising will do. Does this make sense? Okay? So that's what happens with advertising. If there's a perceived need, then we'll go, let's go, and now we could have one of these categories, and you know that and it totally depends on the product or service, which of these are in order. You understand, these are not always the same order per product or service. Okay? The only one that's the same for every industry is trust. It's always number 1 for every industry. Outside of that, they shift. Okay? Proximity is not that big of a deal for an attorney versus a chiropractor. Why? Attorneys are down at the county hub. Why is it not a big deal that proximity is not as big a deal for, I'm talking about the patient who picks the attorney versus the same patient who picks the chiropractor. Location is not that important for the attorney, but it's major for the chiropractor. Why? That's right. They don't have to go there once maybe. There's not a frequency involved. That's exactly right. So they'll go longer distances. That's like I had a chiropractor, you know, he goes, oh, I think I'm going to put an office here. I go, oh, I did all the demographic. I go, that's a bad location. And he didn't know anything. He goes, well, I think it's good because there's a dentist next by. Oh, the dentist has the same factors. How many times do you see a dentist? Once every 6 months. That's if you do, right? So guess how much further you're willing to drive to go to a dentist than somebody you want to see 3 times a week. See? Industries are different. Industries are different. They're not all the same. So we're back to advertising. So if I'm going to do advertising, I'm only going after people where there's a perceived need. Can I do advertising to attorneys who aren't looking for chiropractors? No. No. Had a chiropractor one time. He was mad. He sent out like 500 postcards to attorneys, 500. And he did it once. He sent an advertisement once. And he didn't get any business. He was like mad. That's called stupid. I said, you deserved it. You deserved what you got. That's called stupid. None of them are looking for you. And he sent them to attorneys that weren't in his geographic radius of draw. I mean, there was a lot of other things, but the number one, there wasn't a perceived need. And what was his message? Did it have anything to do with need? No, it was a service factor. They're not looking for him, and he's talking about something that they don't really care about that's not important. And he wondered why it didn't work. And then he did it once. Like, oh, yeah. So, advertising, how does it relate to this? Perceived need. You got to use it where it's a perceived need. What's it used for? Stimulate awareness, interest, desire. Are we going to use advertising? Yeah, we're going to use advertising. Will you get some business from advertising? Yeah. What kind of business? How much business will you get? A lot or a little? A little. You'll get a little. High need or low need business? High need. It's got to be high need again. It's got to be high need. And then you got to be addressing the obstacles of why they're not coming in. The need's already there. Something's blocking them from coming in. What's blocking them? One of these factors over here. One of these. One of these have to be addressed and removed. That's what has to happen to get that business. And so if the consumer, if what is important to the consumer, let's say it's a service factor and that you're open on weekends, but your message is a quality factor that you're certified as a chiropractic sports physician. Does that work? No, wrong message. That's not what they need. They needed a message that said, I'm open on weekends. See? This is how this matters. Okay? So that's advertising and how advertising. Awareness, interest, desire. We will use advertising with our attorney. We'll use publicity to set it up. Then we'll move it to advertising to increase their awareness, interest, and desire. To stair-step them to start increasing some. Because if they don't have an awareness, interest, or desire, is there any need for them to talk to you? Not at all. And if there's no need for them to talk to you, can you do any educational sales? No. So you do have to stir somebody's awareness, interest, and desire just to get their attention. Okay? So we'll do that. We'll do it with publicity, and then we really want to ramp it up with advertising. We want them to go, yeah, let me take the next step. That's interesting. I'm aware of it. That sounds really neat. Okay? And what messaging has to be there for that particular person. So that's how advertising works. Then you come to educational sales. So remember the core formula: need relative to obstacles, trust. Publicity is trust, only affects trust. That's why it doesn't work well. Advertising can affect obstacles and trust. That's why it works better, but it doesn't work at all if there's no perceived need. Educational sales does all three. It establishes need, minimizes the obstacles, and affects trust. That's why advertising gets all this business over here that's not looking for a chiropractor, but has the problem. That's why it gets all the business. That's how I opened 77 offices in 20 states, over 600,000 patient visits a year. I did not wait around for 8% of the population to call me.